My wife was diagnosed at the end of 2011, and it came obviously as a huge surprise and an enormous shock. And then very quickly you're on the kind of medical treadmill where things are kind of taken out of your hands, and that's one of the things that is difficult in the whole journey when you're looking after somebody who is ill and then becomes terminally ill and then dies, because for a long period of that time you're following the advice of other people, the doctors and the medical profession, which you can question to some degree, but not a huge amount, is what I found. So she was ill for about 2 years, and she died in January of 2014. And then you are very much off this treadmill. You've been a carer. You've been looking after somebody. There have been goals, there have been objectives, there have been chemotherapies, there's been radiotherapy, there's been milestones, there's been countless tests, what everybody would have gone through and experienced. But when tragically the person dies, then suddenly all of that is gone. Your focus, your objective, your hopes and your dreams have gone, and you are left pretty much on your own. And it's a difficult, terrible time. I had 3 children who were then about 5, 8 and 11, who you've got to cope with, and okay, you've been at home looking after them, but now suddenly you are the only parent that they've got, and you've got to deal with all of their emotions and all of your emotions. And there are well-meaning people out there, and there'll be friends and family, but you are desperately looking for somebody to relate to, whether it's an organisation, whether it's a person, whether it's a group of people. And it's very hard to find them because you just don't really know where to go. And on top of that, you've got to deal with all the practical stuff of funerals and talking to schools and getting death certificates and speaking to banks and closing down accounts and claiming life assurance. And there is this sort of contrast between this sort of bureaucratic nightmare and also this emotional well of depression that you have just literally sunk into. And to cope with those two things at the same time is overwhelming. And to some degree, the fact that you have got to do certain things like organise funerals and make sure that you've got enough money to live on and all those kind of things does help keep you on the straight and narrow. But when that has stopped, then you're just left at home with 3 very emotionally charged children and yourself, and very little support. What did I find useful? I stopped drinking. I found that was quite helpful. Simply because I had 3 children to look after, and I couldn't. I hadn't crawled inside the bottle at any stage at all, to be honest. But I just felt that I had to be on top form. And the one thing I did know was that I had to look after myself in order to look after the children. Nobody told me that, but I did know that. And so I kind of went to the gym and I carried on swimming, and I ate well, and it was just a struggle, but you knew that if you collapsed, then you were going to be no help to the kids whatsoever. And you do get some very odd things happening to you, and I'm sure it will happen to other people who hopefully are watching this. You get some very strange physical reactions. You get odd pains and aches and things in your body, and you become convinced yourself that something is wrong. And to be completely honest, I ended up a week before my wife died having an endoscopy down my throat and a colonoscopy, because I literally was falling to pieces. I'd kind of kept it together for 2 years, and I knew that we were coming to the end, and my body just literally gave out. Oh, and I had to go and see some prostate guy because I literally for 3 days I couldn't stop going to the loo every minute. And the point about raising that is that they're probably psychosomatic to a degree or whatever, but your body just reacts in ways that you simply can't understand, but they're very real diagnoses. So I knew that probably because of that, and after Chandra died, I thought, I've got to be on an even keel. I've got to be fit. I've got to be healthy. I've got to be there physically and emotionally, for the children. So So that was something I did quite a lot. I did go and see a counsellor and a therapist, and what that told me was that was something I should have been continuing whilst Chandra was ill, which I hadn't done. And so a friend of mine who I used to see quite a lot for, he's a mate of mine, we used to meet for breakfast and have a drink or something, whatever, and he was always saying, look, you probably want to get some counselling, and I said, no, I'm fine. But actually he was right, and one of the things that I would urge people to do is I mean, here we're talking about afterwards, but actually during, you need somebody to talk to. And you might think that you're talking to friends, and you might think you're talking to family, but actually you need that independent counselling advice. And I'd say to people who are sceptical of it, as a lot of people are who are English and not American, you know what, it's, if you get one thing out of a 15-minute session, then it's one thing you didn't know before you turned up. But it's hard to go back to that time and remember it exactly. I mean, it was awful, it was terrible. You never went to bed before 2 o'clock in the morning, probably at the earliest. You could sleep, but you could never get the urge to go to bed. You never wanted to go to bed. There was no reason to go to bed. And probably having the children to some degree kept me sane. You got to get up, make 3 breakfasts, do 3 school runs. That gave you some kind of focus. But as I said, there was no. You could read books about other people who've gone through grief, and some of those were helpful, and some of them weren't. But you're fishing around. You're looking for everything that you can possibly grab. And again, I'm not someone who likes something too prescribed, but it would have been good to say, look, guys, this is what you're going to kind of expect after 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. Like my dad, he had his bladder removed recently, and for cancer, but the point was that the doctor said to him, by day 3 you'll be feeling like this, by day 4 you'll be like that, by day 5 you'll be, and he said, I couldn't believe it, but he was absolutely right. 3 was like that, 4 was like that, 5 was like that. Now, grief is never going to be as straightforward and as simple as that, but when you go through a difficult, painful, terrible experience, you feel like you're the only person who has gone through that. You know that other people have, but it's so unique to you that you want to be able to reach out, and there were useful things, of course. Widowed and Young was particularly helpful, because you could just communicate with other people who've gone through the same thing. And that's the problem, is that all your friends and all your family with all the will in the world, they don't know, they can't get it, and you get angry and you get annoyed, which is unfair, because you want them to say something, but they don't say the right thing, and that's not their fault, because they're trying. And I remember people were very good though when Chandra was ill. People would always say to me, well, how are you? And that was really important, and therefore you just have to remember that the people love you and they care for you, and your fridge and your freezer will become full of food, which is lovely, because that's people's way of saying, we love you, we don't know what to do. Yeah, so have another frozen lasagna, because you can never have too many frozen lasagnas in your fridge. But yeah, you're kind of waving, swimming, but drowning at the same time. That's the thing. You are keeping it together, but very much at the same time you are completely falling apart.